on another episode of Everyday Witchcraft. And tonight we have a very special guest, Stephanie. How are you?
I'm doing great, Atalanta. How are you?
I'm great. I'm finally so glad to finally get you on the show. So why don't you talk a little bit about yourself first? Just kind of introduce yourself.
Okay. Well, my name is Stephanie Brown, and I am an artist, an author, witch, shaman, one who serves the Great Earth Mother, however you want to define it. And I believe I'm here tonight to talk about my tradition, which we call Modern Totemism, which is working with animal totems for the modern witch, the modern practitioner.
Exactly. Yes. And I don't know anything about it. So I'm so excited. Now, this is something that you created, you came up with?
Yes, we consider this to be it's a working modern tradition. It's based upon mine and my husband Scott's personal work and personal experience with animal totems. It is not a creative reimagining of another culture's work with totem animals. However, you know how it is when you work with anything in a pagan tradition, you see there's going to be a lot of patterns repeated cross-culturally because we are looking at the same earth, we're looking at the same magic, we're looking at the same nature, the same truth. So I do talk about when you in my book, I do talk about elements that you might come across from this culture or that culture or whatever. But yes, as a whole, it's just the result of us working with animal totems, working with animal spirits directly. So you can use it companionably with another tradition if you like. You can be a Wiccan and be a modern totemist, or whatever you are. It works together.
Considered Wiccan. Is it considered Wiccan, or is it, well, it's not part of the Wiccan religion, so it wouldn't be considered Wiccan, but does it follow kind of the same like guidelines and things like that, like the Wiccan Read or anything like that, or is it something a little bit different or combination?
What it is it is a pathway. We consider the personal animal totem to be the face of the soul, or the face of the sacred self. So the path of modern totemism is going to help you learn about yourself inside and out, which is the path to wisdom. The know thyself is that ancient truism, right? So this will help you to get to know yourself. It is not like a full religion in the sense that, no, there isn't a package of morals and guidelines that go with it. It is just like, this is you working with your spiritual self directly. And so that's why if you want to be Wiccan and follow the Wiccan Read, or if you're heathen or a Sautru and you follow those paths of truth, it can mesh together.
So how do you get started in it? What do you do? First of all, start with, what's a totem animal? For those that are watching that don't know, because we have a lot of beginners watching this show.
Absolutely.
What is a totem animal?
So the word totem it's one of those words like witch or magic or pagan, where the definition can meander a little bit depending on who you ask and what their educational background is and what their tradition is. To us within our work, we consider a totem to be a personal guiding and tutelary animal spirit that works with you. Like I said, it's sort of the animal face of your sacred self or your soul. So in that way, it is within you, but it is also sort of that which connects you to the higher plane, however you want to define it, whether those are gods or the spirit world or whatever. It's sort of an in-between you and the sacred, and it therefore helps you learn about all aspects of yourself. I know there are some traditions out there, like you'll see the modern versions of some Native American traditions, for example, that consider totems to be a temporary animal guide or animal spirit. And that's fine. It's again like when you're defining the word witch, like it can mean different things to different people. There's no one universal working definition. But for us within our tradition, we believe that the totems are with you since birth, right? Because you have the same soul your whole life. You're the same person. You just change and learn and grow, but you're still you. And so the totem is permanent. So the process that I go through in my book is walking you through how to discover what your totems are. There isn't an element of like choice. You're not choosing a totem and then bringing it in to work with you. You're looking within yourself to find what are the animals that are the best. They're going to be the best face for your sacred self, right? And before I get too far, I should also clarify, we have a system, in fact, where you work with 9 animal totems. You don't just have one, you have 9. You have the center totem, or the primary totem, which is best reflective of your whole sacred self, or your whole character, your whole being. A lot of people, especially in the pagan metaphysical witchy world, probably already have a fair idea of what that animal's going to be, even though they might call it something else. I might call it a spirit guide or a power animal or something like that. But we also believe you have what we call a lord and a lady, or the masculine and feminine sides to the self. And then you have an earth totem, an air totem, a fire totem, a water totem, a light or day totem, or a dark or night totem. And so working with the characteristics of those elementals, like you might see in a Wiccan circle, for example, your fire totem is the fire within yourself. That's the part of your soul that is the magical fire elemental, right? So that's also represents your passions and your drives and all the fire that's within you.
How that works? Do you have to have 9? Can you have less than 9?
I kind of go into it in a little more of a complex way in my book. We do believe that you have 9 for kind of a very specific reason. And I have I don't know if it'll show on the video or not, but I have a visual aid that I use when I do this class, like in person. Is your primary totem, and then your lord and lady totem, so your masculine and feminine, those are the ones that are closest to being exactly you, the face of your soul as it is, right? So if you imagine those in a center point, all of the elemental totems are a little left, right, above, below, because they're a less complete aspect of yourself, right? So it's like your water totem, which I don't know if you can see, the blue balls are in this one, is the water. Works a little better in person. But anyway, it's a little off to the side. It's to the west of you. And it's the opposite to your air totem, which would be from this angle to the right of you. And so because of that, if those 6 points, left, right, front, back, above, below, kind of sit around you in a sphere, we believe. It is kind of like being in a Wiccan circle, where it's like you've got the elementals kind of called around you, except this is something you carry with you all the time. You carry your totems within you, carry that magic within you. But that only works if there's 6. There's one for each of the directions: left, right, front, back, above, below. So
you go to each one, like for certain things, like maybe, okay, with air, a lot of times I use that for thought. So if you are needing to come up, okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Well, for example, whenever I do interviews or talks about totemism, and I definitely want to lean into my air totem because it's about communication and thought, so I have some little gifts that my air totem have given me that to me focus my air and help me communicate and be clear and lean into my air totem. So that he can assist me and bring out that side of me for the interview. As far as the permanence aspect, though, we do also believe when you're interacting with the magical realm, the magical world, you're going to encounter, there are so many different types of spiritual entities out there that you could potentially communicate with. There's gods, there's ancestors, there's all sorts of, there's fae folk, there's all sorts of things. You can also encounter just animal spirits that aren't your personal totems. And we refer to that in the book as spirit guides. It's a temporary helper. You know, if I want to be super brave, so I call in, you know, bear to be with me to make me feel super strong, I would consider that a spirit guide. You know, it's not the same as me calling on one of my totems that's part of who I am as a person.
Right. So the part, okay, the totem that's part of you, it's the
Mhm.
spirit of the animal that's a part of
Mhm.
you that helps, that
Right.
is part of like your soul. So that's why
Right.
they stay with you. Okay. And then you can
Yes.
call in other animals when needed. I have kind of a goofy question.
Sure. Yeah.
Is it realistic animals, or can you call in like mystical animals as well? Is that different?
You can always call on whatever the heck you want. That's your prerogative as a witch. You can call what you need and what you want. As far as our work with totemism, our belief though is that your actual totems, the ones that represent sides of your soul, will be terrestrial animals. They will be like real meat, physical animals. And part of that we believe is because those animals also walk a mortal life on this earth. They have wisdom, they have instinct, they have intelligence to share with you about how to live on this earth. That maybe something like a dragon, for all the wisdom that they might have, doesn't really understand the day-to-day mechanics of, you know, wandering through a forest looking for food kind of
Right.
thing.
What
So
about animals from the past? You know, maybe some that aren't around anymore.
absolutely. Well, that's something that I've talked about in my book as well. And generally speaking, it depends on what you mean in the past. Like if you're talking about a woolly mammoth, for example, woolly mammoths were on the earth, even though they're extinct now, they shared the earth with humans. We did walk the earth at the same time. So it's a lot easier for a modern human soul to kind of access that energy compared to something like a velociraptor from millions and millions of years ago. That energy is so far off that it really wouldn't have anything valuable to teach you about how to live now, even if you
Presently.
could access.
Right.
Right.
That makes sense.
I do tend to think that it, you know, like the more modern extinct animals, I would still say, like, if you're communicating with a saber-toothed tiger, for example, since it is extinct, I might say it might be leading you towards a currently alive similar animal. Like look at tigers and cougars and jaguars and something like that. Because animals that are alive now have a much higher chance of actually being your totem than one that's extinct. And it's also kind of the matter of especially the ones that we're talking about from the Ice Age, their advice and their instinct on how to live on this earth is kind of not useful anymore. The earth isn't like that anymore. So,
that makes
I
sense.
would much rather,
Got to be
I would much
present.
rather, yeah, I'd much rather ask, for example, an Indian elephant or an African elephant that are alive right now what to do and how should I act compared to a woolly mammoth, because woolly mammoth, what she has to say may not be relevant
Right. Yeah,
anymore.
she wouldn't know. She wouldn't know how to
Right.
exist on this earth right now because it's completely different.
But
Okay. Well, how do you do that? What's the first step in getting in touch with your totem or figuring it out?
well, there is no one way, unfortunately. I wish it was that straightforward that I could just give a like steps 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's a process of looking within yourself and asking within yourself. Like, as I said, some people probably already know what their primary totem is. Some people are that in tune with that animal energy that they just immediately go, well, yeah, my totem is bear. I know that already. Like that's accessible within their mind. Other people, it can be a little more of a meandering journey. It's a matter of creating clear mind, sacred space, however you want to define it, opening yourself up and saying, look, I am really ready to begin the journey to know me, not just the parts I like, not just the parts I know, but the whole me, including my darkness and my light and my good habits and my bad habits and my past and present and future and all of that together. And sometimes you might get something come into you right away. Other times the totem might wait until like the right moment to reveal itself to you. That's when you might want to start looking out for like dreams or visions that you might have, or maybe some sort of meaningful wild encounter, or some other sort of meaningful event where it'll just kind of hit you. That's it. That's the animal. You have to be able to trust your intuition and open yourself up to spirit in order to be able to, and that's actually not as hard as it sounds, but you do have to be ready to be open to yourself, and that part can be hard.
So as far as the different elements and the animals that represent, that are the totems for those a particular element, do they have to be, like, for example, the water totem, does it have to be like a fish or a water animal, or can it be anything that's good with like emotion? Does that make sense what I'm asking?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a really good question. Usually you might see a connection, like there might be a water animal, but you absolutely do not have to have a water animal in your West totem. And you'll find that if you have an animal that's associated with one element seated as the totem of another element, what that means is that within you, those two ideas are kind of like interlinked. So like, let's say you have a water animal in your earth totem, for example, but that would mean that your emotional side and your physical side and your instinctual, side that is earth are inseparable to you. Those two things are one and the same. Or like if you have a bird, which you'd usually say is an air animal seated somewhere else, like maybe you're above, or your day totem, which above is the idealistic self, like what you hope to be, or your ideal self. That would mean that you intellectualize that part of yourself, like you feel that the idea self is a scholar or a learner or something associated with air, that those elementals overlap.
I like that. No, I like that. This is interesting. What are some of the, like, what would you have as far as for advice for somebody that wanted to tap into it? What kind of, is there meditation? I mean, there's probably different methods, but what would you suggest would be the best method?
Well, I would take a look at what your practice kind of already is, what you're familiar with. Do you do daily meditation? Do you do like active meditation, like shamanic journeying, or do you do quiet, still meditation? Do you do a lot of Wiccan ritual? Do you do a lot of wandering in the forest, just open up to spirit? And there's no wrong way to approach it. Just do what feels appropriate to you, to feel safe asking that question of yourself.
Like divination? Could you divine on it?
You absolutely could. And there's a ton of different like card decks out there that have animals on it for totem divination. There's you can do, what you might be seeing is the closest animal that you can get to your real totem animal that the deck can provide for you. Like most decks might have raven or crow in it, but they may not have magpie or blackbird or something that's really similar, and that might actually be what your totem is, but the deck just kind of said, well, this is the closest fit we have for you. And you should also kind of be mindful of that no matter how the totem presents itself to you, because you'd really be surprised how many animals exist that you don't know about. If you actually look at how many different species of deer exist, or even just because it's a black bird doesn't mean it's a blackbird. There's tons of black colored birds in the world, and your totems can come from all over the world. You're maybe more likely to get North American animals if you're an American person, because those are closer. but sometimes there's only two types of elephants available, and neither of them live in North America. So if you have elephant totem energy, it's going to be Indian or it's going to be African. Those are the two choices, but mice, there's dozens of different types of mice. So
think about that. Mice, moles. And what about connecting with them? Like, if you wanted to go, what do you do to connect, like, with your air totem?
There's so many different ways. There's a lot of, you do what feels right for you. So I have some things I can recommend, but it is kind of open to whatever feels right for the practitioner. So for me, I recommend researching the animal first, like get in Wikipedia or whatever you want to use to do your research, and read about the animal, read about its habitat, its behaviors, its diet, like its life. Where does it live? What other animals does it interact with on a regular basis? And then also you can become knowledgeable about the animal so that you can talk to other people about it. Somebody who has a shark totem, for example, and a lot of people are afraid of sharks, but they might be able to say, look, sharks aren't really responsible for as many injuries as you're thinking. Cows are more likely to kill you. Yeah. You're more likely to be bitten by a dog than you are by a shark, so you don't have any reason to really be terrified of that energy, right? You can, I think it's valuable to honor the totem by having images of them in your space. Like, I like to get little figures of them and put them on an altar that I have for my totems. You can, branch out from that to get like artwork or, just different things to put in your house. Sometimes it's valuable to get images of the totem that sort of matches the activity that's going to happen there. So like, if you have a desk where you do your writing or your research or your schoolwork, that might be a good place for your air totem because it's your intellectual side. Like, I have images of my lady totem, my sacred feminine, in the kitchen, because when I'm baking and making recipes, and that for me connects me to my sense of the divine feminine. That's the hearth is the ancient female sign for a lot of the goddesses, right?
I did an experience with the underworld years ago, and I had met with, in a cave, I met with a baboon, of all things, and it reached out. Okay, so there was a baboon, and then there was a cougar that was pacing back and forth behind the baboon, but the baboon was in front. But it seemed like the cougar wanted to tell me something, but I never did find out what it wanted to tell me. But the baboon reached out, grabbed my heart, and squeezed it really hard. It hurt. I mean, it hurt a lot. And I was like, whoa, what's going on here? But I trusted the process. I let it do its thing. And then it just kind of let go and looked at me in the eyes. And then they both walked away. And then I returned. Within a couple of days, I had to make a decision to put my my dog down. And it was really hard. And I felt that pain all over again. And I was almost wondering if, it was kind of a warning, hey, you're about to go through a really big heartbreak, because it was a service dog. And it was strange, but I don't know if that's a totem animal or is that just one that was there. I've never had it, appear to me again. But you could probably journey to the underworld, maybe, and with the intent of, okay, I'm here, I'm open to receive, my totem animals.
Yeah, absolutely right on. I mean, I would agree with you. That really has a ring to it. Like, there's some sort of, totemic connection, that whatever it is, you weren't quite ready to receive whatever it was Cougar had to tell you, because baboon was going to be heard first. And once you're comfortable with all 9 of your totems, like, I would say the one you'd want to take with you into underworld journeys would be your night or your dark side totem. But you can also primary with you. You could, that could have been any of them for you. And so, yes, you're right. if that feels like something you want to pursue in understanding what those animals like have to do with you totemically, is go journey back there. Absolutely. Go back, or journey to I tend to think of as like a neutral place, like a nice calm natural environment or something like that, and you can call to you the baboon or the cougar and just ask them. I'm very much in the camp of there's no harm in asking in these types of situations. Seek out the baboon and ask him, like, I'm so thankful for the help that you gave me then on that difficult time prepping me for what was going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to know, what is our relationship? Can you tell
Right.
me? Yeah, are you still set on standing between me and the cougar, or can I, and see what happens?
Yeah, he was not letting me have any part of the cougar at all. So, and it was just going back and forth, like it was, it wasn't like it was going to attack me. It was like it had something to tell me, so it was interesting. But
Sure.
I've never really, I mean, I've worked with totem animals
Mm-hmm.
and a lot because of what I do, the bone throwing, but I've never realize that you could have that animal to literally be, people say, okay, well, the crow is my totem, and I'm, we're connected, we're soul connected and stuff, but I didn't realize that you could explore it in other ways, and actually have these animals be a part of you, literally part of your soul. So
Absolutely.
that's a lot of great guidance you can have.
And they
Talk
definitely
to me
will
a
help
little
you.
bit about your husband. Doesn't he do the reading, totem
Help
reading?
you with yes, he does do totem readings when we're in in-person events. And what that is he is looking at the energy kind of that he intuitively feels around you.
Mm-hmm.
And what he'll produce is a starting point for you. He'll draw a card for that totem for you. And if you're in touch with your spiritual self at all, to be able to intuitively feel like, is that right on? Does that feel accurate to how you feel within yourself, or is that a mistake? And since that's likely to be a related animal and not the exact totem, you might draw you know a white-tailed deer, and something in you says that's not quite right, and then maybe you'll find out your totem is like a reindeer or something that's like similar but not the same animal.
Mm-hmm.
Ultimately, though, since you're talking about your own soul, like, you always have power of veto over someone else's opinions, no matter how practiced they are. You better than someone else can ever know you,
Right.
especially somebody who is just a stranger or an acquaintance like my husband. So it is to get you started on your journey. And sometimes you can learn as much from an inaccurate answer as you can from an accurate answer, because it's like, if he pulls up turtle and you go, no. I, you know but that'll help click it inside of your head to know what he's usually pretty accurate, though. You rarely get somebody who fights against it.
Yeah.
But
You get that in any reading, though, every once in a while. Can you talk a little bit about the different, okay, you kind of briefly talked about the masculine and feminine totems aspect. Can you go a little bit more in depth with that? Okay, what would you use the fire totem for? What would you use the earth totem for? What would you kind of explore that a little bit?
yeah, absolutely. Okay, so the Lord and Lady totem, the masculine and feminine, are the ones that it's complicated to talk about it, because everyone's relationship to the gender binary is kind of different. It's unique to your understanding of your gender identity, your relationship to your mother and father, like really what you within yourself think of as the ideal woman and the ideal man, however you define that for yourself. It also overlaps with the principle in Wicca of the Lord and Lady, where you're talking about like the yin and the yang, and like they say active passive. I prefer active permissive energy. There's that which is moving and that which is still, right? And it's those two those two principles within yourself. I have found that because a lot of people's relationship to the gender concepts varies so much, that with some people the active totem, the lady totem, and the passive totem is the lord totem. Like that's how it is with me. My lady totem is the active energy, and it can really be either direction. If somebody is just, because of their own, where they are in their own sense of self, they don't like the metaphor of, you know, that they don't really dealing with gender in it because it's complicated for them, you can just go and think of them as sort of a, okay, the yin and the yang totems, and just kind of not worry about gender and relationship to it. But totems exist to help you understand yourself. And I think every person examining what does it mean to be a man and what does it mean to be a woman and what does it mean to be between those two is a more accessible question. It's we're all going to answer that question at one point. And so the totems are in you to address that. They're going to figure out what is your answer to how do you define those two things, and then how do you use it to define who you are and how you live and how you practice your magic, etc. Right?
The lord and the lady too,
away from
it doesn't have to be necessary lord and lady. It can be just simply masculine and feminine, just energy is what it basically boils down to.
It's usually right? Because we have a concept of what mother was and who father was that kind of help shape that as we're growing up. So you will have your lady totem will be a female animal, and your lord totem will be a male animal. But the thing that you might discover is that some animals, it really doesn't make a lot of difference if they're male or female. The males and females look the same, they live the same, they behave the same, and other animals not. Like with deer, a stag and a doe look different, and they have different roles within the herd, right? But like crows, you know, with birds, you need to get a DNA test to know whether it's a boy crow or a girl crow, because they look exactly the same and the role within their flock is the same. So to me, that's kind of reflective of like how you're going to understand gender and gender roles. You know, it's possible to have full respect for male and female, men and women, but still think that there's a fundamental difference in the way that men and women think and behave and whatnot. That might be reflective in a lord and lady totem, where it's the males and females are very distinct from each other, but somebody who doesn't really feel like there's a lot of difference between the way men and women think and act, and doesn't really see gender, strongly binary gender as something that's important, you might look at animals that, you know, are a little less obvious about their expression of what sex they are. So
and it just makes sense that because it's part of you and part of your soul, it's going to match. It's going to be
reflective of how you feel. Yes. Right. And for some people, they may not know. I mean, that can be a really complicated question to have to answer for, you know, yourself. And that is one your primary totem, the center one, is almost always the opposite sex to how you identify. So like I identify as a woman, so my primary totem is male. Someone who identifies as male, their primary totem is going to be female. Somebody who is a little more non-binary, it may not be as obvious. You know, you might deal with something like a cougar. You know, it's cougars, you know, the males are a little bit bigger than the females, but you know, you really kind of have to look under the tail to know whether you're dealing with a male or a female cougar, because they hunt the same, they act the same. So gender is not as big.
Is that to balance like out, you know, to have the masculine and feminine of you? Is that what that's?
Yes, okay. That's absolutely it. We all have masculine and feminine within us. We all have the lord and the lady who are spiritual creative parents within us, right? It's just not all of that kind of surfaces in the identity that we assume for this life and present to the world. So yeah, I identify as a woman in this life and present womanhood out. So there's a part of me then that is the divine masculine that is not expressed. And so for me, that is the primary totem. He's male. He's everything. He's all of my masculinity that is not expressed in this identity, if that makes sense. If I sort of feel like if I had been born into a male body, like same soul, but in a reincarnation situation, then the totem would be female, because it's the part that's not coming forward, but it's still still a yin and yang kind of a relationship. Mm-hmm.
What about the elements? What do you use each of the elements for, as far as, to call on this totem animal for fire, that particular representation of fire? What would you call on that for, about the water, the air, and earth?
Well, there's a lot of different things. The 6 elemental totems are kind of a more limited snapshot of your whole soul or your whole personality. Of course, your Lord, your Lady, and your primary are they represent most of you, if not all of you, right? Whereas looking at the water totem, that really is just the part of your soul that is the water elemental. It's all that is deep emotion and the flowing feelings and whatnot. And so when you want to deal specifically with that part of yourself, that is when I would consciously kind of draw on that totem animal to focus on that aspect of myself. Like, for example, if I was going to visit a friend who just lost a loved one, and I wanted to make sure that I was really in tune with my intuitive self and my emotional self, I wanted to make sure that that part of me is present to be there for my friend. I would lean into my water totem. Mm-hmm. But there are other times when you want to do the opposite. Like if you're getting up to give a big speech in front of a bunch of people and you're scared, you kind of want to move away from your water totem because it's where your fear is. You want to lean towards your air. You want to lean towards your air, which would be the opposite of that, to be, no, this is my intellectual side, this is my logical side. Mm-hmm. Some of the dark work that I talked about myself doing recently has really, really gotten me in touch with my earth totem, because it's dealing with very, very early memories, like earlier than 5 kind of memories and trauma that I had repressed and had not dealt with, and realizing that that's the earth within you is what remembers. But your earth is also more just your body. If you said, shoot, I got to lose 20 pounds, what do I want to do? I'd talk to your earth totem, because it's your body. And she's saying, ask her, why are we eating so much recently? What have we got going on that's making this, making you want to, fatten us up for winter, so to say, like what's going on? Lean into your fire totem, usually when you want to be, for me, when I want to be brave for something, or if you want to fight, like if somebody gets into an argument with you and you got to defend yourself and you got to stand up,
fire.
Think about the fire totem, pull that forward.
Your action,
absolutely
action or energy or any of that thing. I would think that would be helpful too. Well, okay, talk about your book a little bit. Do you have a copy of it with you?
I do. This is my book right here. This is the Modern Totemist. Everywhere online and on social media, I am Painted Caves Studio. So you can go to paintedcavestudio.com. That is my Etsy store. That's all, like my social media is all Painted Cave Studio. So if anybody is interested in it, that's any of those, you can go and find my book. Also, anybody can feel free to message me through any of the social media if they just have questions, if they want to know about getting started, or just about how our tradition works and what we do. I'm always happy to interact with people. There's the more people I can speak to who have experience with their totems, the more I learn about how they work. Because we are, at the end of the day, two monogamous cisgendered straight people, and it's like, we know our totems work a certain way that other people, it may, and we're American, and we don't know if it, having exposure to living in different parts of the world might make somebody more likely to have totems that are, different from how they would be if they lived in North America. So, always love to hear from people about how they come to know their animal selves, their sacred selves in an animal form, and how that works for them. So yeah, absolutely. Message me.
Yeah, you like to hear from people.
Absolutely.
I'm not sure if we covered this, but how did you come up with this? Like, how did you just wake up one day and say, hey, you know what? This is making sense. Like, did it just all come to you at once? Did it gradually pull together? Was it the shamanism that kind of brought you there?
It was a little bit the shamanism that got us there. That was something that my husband Scott he was kind of already working with totemism when we met. But it was still something that he hadn't really done that much to really grow the tradition that he and I built together. It was just something that he came across in his early journey into paganism, and discovering what his path was going to be. It was something that resonated with him, and it's for the same reason it resonates with me. Like, it's really important to me that it isn't connected to one culture. Like, I was never that Wiccan or that new greeny fluffy bunny person who said, oh yes, I have Irish ancestors, so therefore I'm going to be a Celtic Wiccan. I'm going to jump right into worshiping, Brigid and the Dagda and whatnot. It's, this is more like, if you prefer to just invoke like the Earth Mother and the Green Man in your circle rather than a specific Lord and Lady, or if you just like working with, sun and moon energy and the elementals and whatnot, and this is what made it attractive to me. Animal energy is the birthright of everybody. Different cultures have their traditions for how they interact with it, and that's for them. But the animals themselves are just part of nature. They're just that's for everybody. So
natural.
It is, yeah. And I do understand that there's this idea that totems are a Native American thing, and it's true. That's part of the spirituality of a lot of Native American people. But you can absolutely work with and get to know your totem magic even if you're not Native American. You don't have to worry about like appropriating something that doesn't belong to you.
It belongs to everyone.
Right, exactly. About symbols for the totems and being able to access their energy by bones and whatnot. And I was showing this is one of my more powerful air totem talismans. And what this is I think this is a rabbit bone. I'm not really sure, but it was given to me by the crows that I feed. They come to my bird feeder and they eat the bird food, and sometimes they leave me little things as thank yous. And this bone, I found it in the feeder basket. It was already perfectly dried and totally clean, like it was meant to be from them. So it's not a crow bone at all. It is, I think maybe rabbit, but it's from them. They gave it to me. So this is my connection to them. Yeah. So,
and your jaguar claw.
Yes. So I was, what this is it's a cast of a jaguar claw. Jaguar is my primary totem. And I got this from a company that makes these for use for taxidermists to use. They make like the teeth, and they make the claws and whatnot. And so it is a cast from a real claw, but it's not a real claw itself. And that can be really useful when you're dealing with a totem animal that is endangered or it's otherwise protected, and it's certainly not legal, and it's not moral to,
not ethical,
something that like was taken illegally, because if they're endangered and there's not that many animals available in the wild, like what right do I have to,
Yeah, and
to
how
see
are
to
you
it?
going to connect with something that you're taking something, unethically, and you expect them to come to you? They're going to be afraid to come
Right.
to you, So
Exactly. Yeah, that's not a good connection. But so some people, are lucky that they have totem animals where, it's really easy to get, if you have a mule deer or a whitetail deer totem, they shed their antlers. And if you live on the eastern half of the United States, people are going to hunt those animals whether you use the antler or not. It's going, that doesn't really make a difference to their numbers whether you take the leftover pieces or not to use in your magic. So it really just depends. You can get creative, like my husband Scott's primary totem is a wolf, and we went to Yellowstone, and they sell casts of the paw prints of some of the wild wolves that live in the park. So it's an individual wolf that made that footprint, and then they cast it, and then you can buy the cast. That's a really good way to get really close to the energy.
the wolf hair that you have.
We just got very lucky that we made contact with a wolf rescue that was willing to give us some of the fur that is shed, because it's in New Mexico and it's hot and the wolves shed like crazy. And so they sold it to us. But it's very, very difficult to be able to, there is some legal wolf hunting like that happens in the more northern states, but it's tricky, and it is in a kind of in an ethical gray area as to whether you think those wolves should be culled, like, or not, and whether you kind of want to be part of that or not. That's an individual's question that I don't have, decide
Think
that for
outside the
yourself.
box a little bit on
Yeah.
when getting something to connect with that animal.
Okay, so as far as some other you can get creative, like you said, and getting something like I went to a place that was it was rehabilitation for circus elephants, where they got to have their retirement, and they make these little things where they make a little trunk print. I don't know if you can see that. But so it's like, okay, I know a female mature elephant touched this with her trunk and she wasn't harmed in it. Another thing that you could think about is going back to those recently extinct animals that we talked about. You can get something that's very similar to your totem. Like this is mammoth tooth. What is it? The dentin, I guess it's the enamel on the outside of the teeth. Elephants are extremely protected. Like having real elephant ivory is extremely illegal, but stuff from mammoths is actually, it's rocks and minerals as far as the governments of the world are concerned. So it is legal to have mammoth ivory, and mammoth teeth fragments are what you find those a lot in the United States, and so you can buy them pretty commonly. So
I have a tusk. I have a piece of a mammoth tusk in my bone kit, and that's another thing. Fossils. Like
I said, you can get my book off of my website directly, which is just paintedcavesstudio.com. Also off of my Etsy store is a good way to get it. You can, it is available on Amazon. They don't pay me quite as much, but I don't make as much that way. But the easiest way to find it is to just put in Modern Totemism. There's lots of different ways to buy it. Message me through, like I said, Facebook, Instagram, the social media. I'm all Painted Caves Studio, and that's probably the best way to get in touch with me. So,
and I highly recommend this because, especially like those that work with your spirit guides all the time, don't forget that these animals are your spirit guides, and that's really important. So, yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming. Oh, do you do classes? You mentioned some classes and stuff. Do you teach classes on this yet?
I do. When the opportunity arises, I unfortunately don't have any scheduled at the moment. I try to, whenever I vend at a pagan event, I try to see if they do, little workshops and things. And if we have enough people in a certain area who ever want to do the whole weekend experience where we really like do a deep dive into totemism, then we'll do it. But we don't have any of those scheduled right now. But maybe if, we get enough hands raised, that's something that people want to do.
Does that have to be in person? Can you do something privately with, can you do a private session with somebody by video? Or does it have to be like a group setting?
I don't see any reason why we couldn't do some sort of Zoom situation. That might work just fine, okay. Actually. I've never done that before, but I think it would work.
Always the first. Well, great. Okay, getting in touch with you. Painted Cave Studios, is that right? Okay, perfect. Yeah. Thank you so much for coming on here, and we'll have you again, and I'll see you soon. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.
Bless you. This segment is a continuation of our bone magic. So today we are going to make hot foot powder with bones. Now, this is a very basic recipe. There are obviously some other things that are added to it from personal preference, but I will kind of explain that along the way.
The first thing you would need is a mortar and pestle. Black pepper and crush it into the bowl. Then you can add cayenne pepper, dried prickly ash or red pepper. Nettle is commonly used in hot foot powder. And then any other herb you think might be helpful. Graveyard dirt is the next ingredient and is a must when working with hot foot powder. Be sure when you're collecting graveyard dirt that you leave an offering of thank you behind. Then you want to add sulfur, and I'm doing all these additions of the extra powders in threes. Black salt. Once again, I'm putting this in threes, all the powders. Now I have a voodoo oil that I'm adding to my chicken bone. I'm using chicken bones because that's a general bone that you can use for anything. And as I'm putting the oil on, I'm going from the inside out because we're casting away. Hot foot powder is to cast away people that mean you harm. It is not a curse, but it is something that will make someone go away that's negative in your life. It doesn't take much oil to put on the bones. Now you're going to stir it and chop it up, all the bones, break them, and blend everything together in your mortar and pestle. Put it in your jar. And then do a banishing pentacle 3 times over the jar. Make sure to push in each time you complete the pentacle. At this time, you're going to blow into the jar 3 times, and that puts your breath into it and your energy into it. Push that energy in 3 more times, and your hot foot powder is complete. That concludes another episode of Everyday Witchcraft. We'll see you in 2 weeks. Blessed be.